would visualize in the upcoming few months, it's going to be very crucial for the real estate in India. I think it's not just India. I think globally, it's going to show it's going to be very crucial. There's going to be consolidation in the sector where large developers you're going to find are going to tie up with smaller developers who have the land parcels, for example, who do not have the execution skills and capacity. And we believe that the developers will be formulating a back-to-back framework and draft standard operating protocols, the SOPs, to maintain the tenant confidence. To be honest, from an occupier's perspective, I think they are currently on a wait and watch mode because it's very difficult for them to take a call on what's the way forward. We do see some larger companies continuing to assess their lease requirements. We see a lot of portfolio analysis in play, and we do find a little bit of stress in certain markets within India, when I say between the occupiers and the developers. And their occupiers are looking at establishing a safer workplace in such times with emphasis on health and wellness. Probably never before has many of the countries been so conscious about the health and wellness, and I think that's going to play a very big part going forward. And yes, it's going to be a big testing time for real estate going forward in the coming months.
Yeah, I think it's you're absolutely right. Everybody's thinking, the market sentiments, and it is, again, nobody has seen this situation. Nobody has ever seen this kind of situation will happen ever there in their business. But I think India has been very lucky. Last year, if you see, India saw the peak of leasing activities, and also it has seen healthy private equity investment activities. Now, if you look at how is the investment landscape looking in India, in this situation, and second thing, what do you think, how gonna be leasing activities will be affected in this scenario?
So I think that if you look at the quarter one as an example in 2020, a private equity real estate investment in India was approximately $222 million. It registered a drop of 62% quarter on quarter when you take with the previous years. This is basically, due to the slowing economy which was there, and with the Covid-19 outbreak which had started off in some parts of Asia by then. Our recommendation is, on the investor study of the logistics sector and the data centers, given firm domestic demand and the growth potential of the cloud infrastructure, we strongly believe that investors should also look at core commercial office assets. Though there's going to be a little bit of stress when it comes to the cap rates and stuff, we do believe that opportunistic asset trade transactions are going to gain pace in the next 2 to 3 years as the insolvency and the bankruptcy code 2016, IBC 2016 becomes more established. We do believe that there's going to be more opportunistic trade transactions. As far as the India's office sector, to your question, I think it has seen a robust run over the last 3 years, with a new peak of about 58.6 million square feet in 2019 across 7 major cities. Of course, it's definitely going to likely to see lower gross absorption of about 40 million square feet in 2000. These are broad assumptions that we find that's going to be there, stemming from delays in decision making. Now, factors contributing to lower absorption, if you'd ask me, I would think is revision of expansion plans. Business strategy could adversely impact near-term space take-up. We are finding quite a few multinational companies who have the smaller spaces in within cities, sort of trying to close them down and continue to be in the larger spaces. There are a lot of contingency plans and people looking at the current situation of working from home. There could be a little delay in the discussions on some of the the leasing activities, because we are anticipating construction completion delays due to the labor availability. Because as you know, in India, for example, there has been an opening up of the construction sector, but as we know that the labor force is in huge, though we had I'm aware of some projects where we had 40% when we started late, in sort of early May, where today we probably are talking of coming down to 15%. Is because they've got free ride back home, etc. So there's going to be delays in these. So definitely there are going to be pressures on the leasing, but there is going to be, like, we find that the larger players in the market on the leasing, we have not heard of any of them calling off or pushing their requirements as of now.
I think it's a good positive news. People, those who are in the audience, there might be a good positive hope spread after your statement. Guys, I would request all attendees to please post their questions in Q&A box, and we will be answering all the questions in the Q&A time. And please write your questions in Q&A box. So you've rightly captured everything. Thank you. But I would like to ask you one thing, that how projects are getting pushed, and then the absolutely leases are also getting pushed. How IPCs are helping stakeholders to tide over the crisis. How they are making an ecosystem where everybody is getting the right sense, and how they are managing the situation.
Yeah, that's really an excellent question, Tushar. I think as far as IPCs are concerned, I think there's a common goal that they're taking a step ahead to basically identify the challenges being faced by occupiers and helping them to return to build a strategy which helps their workforce to be in a safe manner. We are advising and encouraging occupiers to invest in technology. Technology is truly going to play a big part, I would say, post Covid-19. Design and wellness, honestly, to overcome the current challenging times. In addition, portfolio optimization and REMS activities have seen increased inquiries. We have introduced a new offering for occupiers, to be honest, the Back to Work Navigator, a service to help occupiers plan and prepare for a successful transition back to the workplace past Covid-19. I think technology is going to play a big part, and the whole issue of how the comfort level for the occupiers, which the developers and occupiers can see that there's a clear a satisfaction for the employees to come in and have a safe environment to work, and the productivity is increased, is the key that's going to make a difference for the present buildings and for future buildings. I would even think that what really is going to happen is that the new buildings has to have a much bigger a transformation in the whole design process and how it is going to look, and Trudy will take us through that in a short time, and I can tell you that that's going to have a big transformation going forward.
I think you're right in terms of the way IPCs are managing the situation, and they are making aware that client, developers, everybody in the ecosystem. I think the role for IPCs are quite big, and I think their responsibility to keep every stakeholder informed and aware is, I think, the right key. Thank you. One question, as you absolutely clear about that, the delays are happening. Everybody knows that delays are happening because of the lack of the manpower, because of the resources, logistics. Everything is on hit right now. What do you think in current scenario, how occupiers, developers, service providers overcome these unusual times?
So I think the primary challenge, in a developing country like India, is that the labor still is available at a certain price, but at this time we find the primary challenge is the labor availability. The supply chain challenges, means material delivery has been delayed, often having knock-on effects on the construction timelines, and project delays, are evident. Construction activity, though delayed by a couple of months due to COVID-19, may not transform into just a couple of months delay on the overall project schedule. I would think there's a much bigger factor at the end, completion of the projects which have already at a certain stage of construction. But I think the developers have already started paying a lot of attention, and contractors, on the workers' daily needs, hygiene factors, and trying to attract the labor force, those who have gone back and those who are ready to come back. And and they're working on the time at the moment. They are working on executing joint development agreement with stronger developers. Investors are on a lookout for distressed assets, and developers can also join hand with investment houses. And going forward, I would think that a bigger part of our construction industry is going to get into mechanization, which I think that a dependence of more on the labor force has to become less. And going forward, we need to see more innovations in construction technology and adapt to more innovative methods, be it precast structures, be it on that's prefab structures or steel structures, composite. A lot of advancement in those technologies have taken place, and it is prevalent across the world. I think we need to start accepting those going forward in order to ensure that we are going to deliver. Now, these do have time advantages, and there might be cost disadvantages, but I think over time we will start accepting it, be it from the occupiers or from developers, an acceptance to see that that is a necessity from a technology perspective going forward.
I think you're absolutely right. Technology will be a big disruptor in construction sector. I think before this pandemic situation, India market was not very acceptable. The technology people were, yes, I think prefabricated structures were very common in Western world. India was adopting it, but I think at this post-pandemic, when people will see the less of manpower, less of the planning, I think this will play a very big role. Just one thing, Sankey, I would like to ask you, how as we have discussed about how IPCs are playing a role to manage the ecosystem. What do you think, how PMCs can create a right empathy between all stakeholders? What do you think, right now the labor is on road and people are really struggling. What is the role you would advise to PMCs to play in this time?
So I think the primary responsibility of every organization at this time, or the support teams, is to to keep the staff safe, to keep the environment safe, because one incident may cause a huge damage to the whole project. So I think when you're talking about project management companies, they have a big primary role, because they are the conduit or the connection between the contractors, between the developers, between the investor and the occupiers, and everyone looks to them to manage and to control the project. So I think there's going to be a huge paradigm shift from the traditional look of trying to do things in-house, or being sort of a project management is something, as an activity. I would call it not as an agency or not as a company that does it, but I would call it as an activity. Whether it's done in-house or outsourced, it has to be done with the utmost care, and the roles that the project management has to play is going to gain much more prominence in the coming days, in order to ensure that projects have a clear-cut third eye view, and to ensure that whether it is on the health and safety, whether it is on the environmental importance, the construction measures, the methodologies, to come up with solutions, and the whole diligence before getting into construction on every project is done to ensure that a project goes through its life cycle and comes out successful at the end of the day, and beneficial and makes business sense, be it for the developer or for the occupier or for every stakeholder involved in the project, to give it a complete wholesome look and to come up with solutions which are totally different, which is required as of today going forward.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right in terms of safety and hygiene and all these aspects will be now mandatory. Earlier people were a little bit casual, but now it is a human life. It is so it will be taken care very sensitively. And I think I would like to ask you one more question, Sankey, that in this time, how the occupiers are managing their business continuity. What factors they should be mindful?
Yeah. What we have found during this time is that all the occupiers, or the general, all the companies felt that keeping the staff safe is critical, and I think occupiers have increased the focus on well-being of employees to ensure the business continuity. Most of the large multinational occupiers have technology in place, as you have seen, to facilitate remote working. But COVID-19, to be honest, as we all will agree, has been a wake-up call for many smaller or more domestically focused occupiers, where some aspects occupiers can look at is invest in improving hygiene within buildings through air filtration systems, to a different kind of air conditioning system, improve ventilation and source separation systems to remove pollutants, better emergency management, risk mitigation plans, create remote working readiness plans. They can even have a clear and effective communication. Definitely they have been successful, I would say, to a major extent, to see that the business has had a continuity with very little disruption in the initial stages. I think they caught on, and I think almost all these occupiers have been successful, though their servers and a lot of it has been successfully running from their offices within the different buildings. And thanks to the developers who maintained it well, I would say that everything worked well. And today occupiers do see that there is a great contingency in hand, though we keep hearing from a lot of the leaders that it might not be 100% solution for all the businesses to work from home, but definitely a contingency has been found. The other point is changes in terms of design, layout, and policies will be of pivotal significance to ensure social distancing. In fact, I would request Trudy to come in here, because we did conduct a global survey, and I would request Trudy to present the details of the same at this point, to share with you, apart from what's India, the global perspective of the work from home and what really they found out during their research, especially in the areas where there was a work from home and the offices have begun and people have started moving to office. So it gives a great perspective of probably what's in store and what we can look at for the future. So Trudy, over to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Trudy.
Thank you, Sankey. And on this point, I perhaps before I tap into topics like business continuity or work from home, I want to first bring to the screen the data that we were able to collect back in April when we conducted a global work from home survey.
Yeah.
So let me. So the slide is on. So back in April, we were across all the global workplace Colliers teams, we were able to do a survey that focused around the work from home experience. And what this questions concentrated around was productivity and desire to work from home, and also the impacts. What are the impacts from a work-life balance perspective? And also how are the leaders and also how are the employees feeling being managed and managing remote workers? So let me take you through a quick, I guess, high-level data point is that we launched the survey back in March. So that was the time when Asia first started working from home for about 4 weeks. We received over 4,000, and the survey is still open. So now we're closing into about 5,000 respondents across the globe. We were able to cover, actually receive entries from over 25 countries. And we're covering around 15 different industries and various different organizational sizes. And today, what I'm presenting or sharing with the audience today is an APAC-focused snapshot. In Asia Pacific, across, I guess, the 5,000 people, where we represented a small portion. However, it's still a good sample size. So we collected over 300 respondents from the APAC perspective. The survey is still open, so I welcome everybody from today's webinar to, go into the link, which we will share at the end of this, to, contribute your feedback into the work from home experience. So first of all, I wanted to share some key highlights from our APAC respondents. So what we are hearing from our APAC respondents and also across the globe is that everybody desires at least 1 day a week. So 82% of people telling us that at least 1 day a week, even post-COVID. What we also hear, including people, the 27% of people who've never worked from home are telling us that work from home is something that they desire, and they expect that they will be given the autonomy. And the trust level during this time is really, really positive. All of 89% of people are telling us that they feel trusted by their managers during this remote working period. And work-life balance is definitely something very pleasant to hear. We are seeing that 63% of people in APAC are telling us that they are enjoying a much better work-life balance. And in terms of productivity, we are hearing 72% of people are telling us that they either remain the same productivity level from the work from home experience, and there's about 30% of people who are telling us that they are actually enjoying a higher percentage in their productivity. And out of these people, they're telling us that by having regular social virtual breaks with their colleagues, and also using the camera, having the, face-to-face interactions on a virtual collaboration is also enhancing the sense of productivity. However, all these are good news, but let's not forget, we still really longing for that face-to-face connection. We are longing to actually meet our colleagues in the office and having the in-person collaboration. So you can see a really high percentage of people still saying that, yeah, we enjoy the work from home. However, we still want to have, the choice to come back to the office and see our colleagues. Later on, the next few slides I want to share with you, how do we compare from a work from home, work-life balance perspective, and comparing the APAC data to the EMEA and America. And you can see on this slide that the Asia Pacific respondents are actually enjoying an even higher work-life balance percentage than the EMEA and America. And what we are seeing here from the different technologies, from the different industries, that technology sector is the one sector that they feel highly trusted by their managers when they continue to remote work. And this is actually very positive, especially APAC has historically been a place where presenteeism is the way that people feel that they've been measured by their managers. And here is a few more, areas where people miss the in-person encounters. This slide tells you what do we miss, the human connections, collaborate with our colleagues in person. And also, some people do prefer, having their work and personal life separated. So we actually prefer to actually be back into the office, and therefore life and work are separated. And the non-work related conversation with colleagues, which don't really happen if we're having a scheduled call, and the spontaneous meeting and so on and so forth. So the face-to-face interactions, from my perspective and from the data, what the data is telling us is it must stay and is here to stay. So next few points I want to share with the audience is early implication for organizations to consider. So these are some of the points that collectively from all the global workplace teams that we felt that maybe highlighting these 4 key areas in terms of short-term and long-term parameters in terms of preparing people to return to work. So work practices. What are the new normal? And maybe the new normal for you could differ to the new normal for organization B, perhaps. So we need to think about the flexibility. And flexibility, really varies from organization to organization. And that has a lot to do with culture and, leadership culture and organizational readiness to adopt higher flexibility. Business continuity, we tapped on this previously. Work from home is very likely 90% here to stay. So how do we, bring that? What kind of policies do we have in place to make sure that people don't feel isolated, and then business continues to foster? I guess the last one, autonomy to choose, is very super important. And during the last 4 weeks, 8 weeks, and 12 weeks for some of us, is that we have actually enjoy the autonomy to be able to choose when we work, how we work, and I guess, what environment do we choose to work remotely. That autonomy is very important, and it must, I guess, remain. I'm going to quickly go over the next 3 points. Is the sense of trust, the unspoken rules. We have enjoyed, high level of trust through the work from home experience. So going from now to the future, managing collaboration virtually, what does that mean? And therefore, the unspoken rules should be, I guess, we should create some sense of clarity. What are these rules? And sense of belonging. Now we have enjoyed the virtual work. And in the future, when we are balancing physical work and virtual work together, how do we establish the sense of belonging? What are the new definitions in this regard? So the 3 Ps. So I talked about the presenteeism. We no longer can be measured by presenteeism going in the future because the remote work is here to stay. So how do we measure people from now? Performance, productivity. There's got to be a new set of parameters going forward. And I'm going to quickly go over the new behaviors when in office, when at home. How do we greet people? Is it elbow bumping, or do we shake hands anymore? What are the protocols? So that's got to be clear communication. What are the new normal space? So being real estate professionals, we must, I guess, understand what are the new, I guess, the way to measure density in the future. Is optimization is still the primary priority for us as occupiers, or do we have to make sure sanitization is the number one priority? And for some of us who have enjoyed unassigned seating currently, what does that mean in the future when the social distancing has to be in place, when the spaces have to be sanitized? Is it assigned seating is the way in the future? So what does that mean for your organization? And there was one question from the audience, is there a one size fits all? There is never a one size fits all. So every organization is different and every strategy is very different. And all of these we need to actually take into account when we start calculating the new space requirements in the future post-COVID. I'm going to quickly go into the call to action. Form a business continuity team with your organization and access your existing condition. What are the conditions right now? What do you need to do? What are the changes you need to do to your space to allow people to come back to work feeling safe and feeling confident to come back to work? And creating strategy and developing, I guess, the strategy with the leadership, balancing physical distancing with effective work practices. So let's not forget, the separation is necessary. However, we don't want to jeopardize efficiency in how we work. Developing policy and communications, creating the sense of empowerment so we get to choose how we work is the most effective way, and every individual is different. And lastly, partnering with your landlord is a quite easy, straightforward concept. So we're in this together. Let us know how we can help. We have done a lot of research and we have a lot of data points. These data points are really critical and meaningful in helping us to create the future strategies post-COVID relevant to your organization. The survey is still open. I would welcome everybody on the call to click the link and give us your data from the Asia perspective.
Thank you, Trudy. Can you stop share, please? So
sure.
We can have conversation. Thank you, Trudy. It's a great data, which and I think it's a good survey to have a reference for future planning. But Trudy, I'm working since last 2.5 months from home. Okay, and I personally feel it is like a 2D experience. It is not a 3D experience. Okay, you see people, you see emotions, you see kind of so many things. So I'm hearing a lot of a buzz around. X companies said that they will be working from home. Y companies said they will be working from home. But personally, I find there's a productivity loss. You have a concentration, less distraction, but there's a less of productivity. What do you say about it? You have already captured in your survey that there is a productivity, XYZ. I leave it to you. But in your views, as a personal views, what do you feel about productivity work from home?
I personally cannot be very productive at home because of the distractions from family and from kids. So for me, I draw a balance between home and the office. So for me personally, productivity, I'm at best when I'm in the office.
And Sanky, what do you say? You are on mute, Sanky. We are not able to hear you. I think, yeah. So now you are unmute. So please.
You can hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so I think that honestly, it's for me, it's traumatic to work from home. Mm-hmm. But honestly, there is, as I said in somewhere in one of the questions, that there are businesses which definitely can work from home. And I think that they have proved that it is successfully being executed. Whether it's, I was talking to some of my other friends in the IT or such businesses, and I believe that they've been able to achieve as good a product with whatever efficiency. But at the same time, there are several questions that are asked. In a lockdown, you don't have any social activities. You don't have any friends coming home. You don't have any disturbance or distraction from anything. You're able to focus and work. But in a normal environment, when you have all those social works associated, would you be able to produce the same result? I think it's a big question, but for one thing is for sure, that you know for sure that there is a contingency where this is possible. For example, today when you have social distancing and companies will be scrambling to see how to make it work in the present scenario, there's a question, you keep hearing the question that are you going to have partitions all around? Are you going to have cubicles for everyone, which is like, say, sealed cubicles? A lot of these questions, I think it's going to be that a combination of work from home between, let's say, everybody would have worked in 2 days, 3 days time, you would have had 100% work from office, but there is a contingency of people working in shifts, and there is more for them to see people, look around and have that social infrastructure like you mentioned and Trudy mentioned. So it's going to be that's not going to go away for sure, but the success of it and how far that's going to become a permanent norm, I would still keep my fingers crossed to wait and watch.
I think, Sanky, you have given a ray of hopes to all developers, okay? Like all the statements which Google, Twitter and TCS are making that they will be working from home till 2020, 2021. I personally, I was like looking at the survey which Trudy has given, and you have rightly said, office is not a place to only work and work. It is about social collaboration. You get ideas, you give ideas. There is a bit of connect is also involved. And I don't see in Indian context that completely people can go work from home. And I would like to again ask you, Sanky, one question. Like looking at the India middle class, okay, people have one bedroom, one drawing room. Okay, they don't have enough space. Like it is not like Western countries where we have a study room separate and we have a luxury life. What do you don't you think that it will be a bit of distraction also?
So I think I'll just make a small clarification to the previous question first. That is that to give you a very fair observation, I was just telling you that work from home is going to be a norm, and it does work in several businesses. And I meant that in some businesses it might not work, which also has been it has been voiced by many of the leaders. And I also said that when we work from home, I think whether it's all these names which you mentioned as the leading companies, multinational companies have mentioned, I think in some form or the other, that they would be rotating so that they would be work from home and work from office, so that it's a combination to balance it. But the good thing that is that there is a new norm that's available, that you can work from home. And I think that what I could understand from people is they have delivered to the utmost in quality or standards and delivery and timelines. So it is something that is there. You cannot just push it under the carpet. It's definitely something that has worked and is going to be there. But how many of the business, like you said, when it comes to the point about the one bedroom and the availability of space, I think there are such constraints which are going to be a question, but how it will be overcome is going to be seen over time, which I think that each of these, individuals will have to come up with solutions for it. So there might be the people who might still have to work from office, and there might be others who can work from home. So it will be a combination of both work from home and work from office, which would be the norm going forward. And then I think the companies will start looking at the constraints which will happen without the lockdown, to see that how efficient it would be, in like when someone was in a call recently, and we found that the child suddenly comes in and is on the video, so in one of the calls, and so everyone was enjoying that. They felt good, but the question is, how much of all this is something that is acceptable, and how far can that play a big role in the decision making going forward? Is, as I said earlier, this is something new, and this is something that have forced people or companies, organizations to rethink strategies, rethink contingencies. So the way forward is going to be a very tricky thing for everybody. And I would say that there's no prescription, no solution. Just as there's no solution, no vaccine for COVID, we all need to patiently wait, watch, and devise methods, and be prepared to adapt and accept what's best for the business, and the best for society, and best for everything that we think about at this moment.
I think well captured, Sankey. Today, Sankey has given an India perspective view, and even the mix of global perspective. But what you are seeing sentiments around it, because you are doing research, you are already working on that solutions. I'm just taking your last comment on that. That what from Asia, different countries like Singapore, or maybe different countries have different social and economic behavior. What do you think? If you want to conclude in one or two lines, how would you like to say your words about it?
Right. I think, I totally agree. Sanke, the work from home is a norm and is here to stay. Right now, there are definitely mixed sentiments around working from home. And for me, I do not like it. And however, it does give me the balance. I can actually choose. I think the most important out of this exercise or out of the data is that people like the flexibility. Okay, they like the autonomy to be able to make a decision for themselves, and they like the company to give them, I guess, right now we're forced to work from home, and organizations are forced to close the office, and therefore this presented an opportunity that we are testing how has it worked from a business perspective. And what we are seeing from the data is that business has not really suffered just because people have been working from home for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And in Europe, people are still, experiencing lockdown. And, this is telling us that BAU, or business as usual, can continue with work from home being part of the business strategy as well as the real estate strategy.
Yeah, so today another question. As we know that Twitter, Google, TCS announcements, okay? But if you go inside the story, that how technology companies are reacting to remote for working, this pandemic situation, how amenable are they for the remote working? So, there is one aspect that we are working from home, we will be working from home. But what is the actual reaction coming from the companies?
What is the actual reaction? Is that?
Yeah.
I guess referring to some of the technology companies such as Google and Twitter announcing that they're happy for their employees to continue to work from home until the end of the year. And I think, this is coming back to the choice element, right? People are given the choice to choose that they can work from home, however, they can still come back to the office. Whereas, some of the companies are saying that, okay, post-COVID, when the business is open, we will continue to have a rotation system. So if you're team A, you have to come back to work. If you're team B, then you stay at home, right? That is a different approach, okay? That is, I guess, in my sense, that is not really giving the flexibility, the choice element, whereas Google and Twitter are saying that, what, we let you choose. Okay, you can come back and you cannot come back. And also this is all subject to how, we have an organizational culture, but we also have team culture. What is the best way for the team to collaborate? And this is really depending on, the individual team culture. Some team, function with 10 people, 20 people, 40 people, right? What is the best way for people to get the most out of a discussion? And if some teams are very savvy with virtual tools, then virtual platform is best. However, some teams, like I find it's very hard to do brainstorming on a virtual platform. So I'm a very visual person, and probably it's because of my architectural background. I like to scribble, I like to draw, I like to write. And if we're not savvy with those virtual technology to replicate the real life physical interactions, then coming back to the office is still really the preferred direction. So what I'm seeing, like, a few years ago, IBM says we want everybody to come back to work. We are not allowing people to work from home anymore. And then they, built a, destination office for people to come back to work. So there are different, many different ways how people see this. Ultimately, we need to allow the choice element to continue, and that's the direction I'm seeing.
Great perspective, Trudy. I think in my views, like, when Uber came in our life, everybody thought that cars will stop to, we will stop buying cars. But still people are buying cars, and number of, sell, and, the car market is like increasing day by day. So what I personally feel like in India, it is a very new forced thought which is coming into the life. But in a Western world, already people were working from home, but it is not that the work is not happening in the offices. So I think well said, Trudy. I would like to ask you one very question from your trade, like, which is you are an architect. You can tell us that what kind of changes you are seeing in workplaces. What kind of workplace trends are changing globally, and what are the trends you are seeing will be done in near future in workspaces.
Do you mean the trends post-COVID?
Yes.
Okay. So during, I guess, we're still in the phase where we're setting the workplaces ready, and social distancing is really the number one priority. Health and safety is the number one priority, and then there comes the third or fourth on the agenda is like, how do we collaborate? And as a strategist, I have helped many organizations implementing activity-based working, shared environments where people have many different types of opportunity to accidentally collide. So now that the question now is like, with COVID and with a lot of separations that are required to separate, I guess, the cross-contamination, what does that mean in terms of the future workplace trends to continue to foster those collaborations, right? So for me, I honestly, I think there is a big debate happening even across our Colliers workplace strategists. Is like, do we continue to advocate activity-based working or shared environments, or is it a case that we have to actually, create a different, maybe even bring people back into the cubicle era? Again, I don't know. I might sound like a broken record, but in terms of space, I still feel that we need to have as many options as possible when people return to the workspace. And we continue to have the conversation, like there's introverts, there's extroverts, there's people who don't really are not really confined by those, I guess, safety measures that much, and they want to be working in the open. They want to be seen. They want to have those very open dialogues with their colleagues in a cafe. We need to have options in the space, and the trends for me, the workplace trends for me, will continue to have different levels of different workspace choices, allowing people to continue to do individual work in open and enclosed spaces, and then do the group activities into different settings. I might not have answered your question, but I think the trends are that we need to have options in the space that we build in the future.
So Trudy, do you think open office or closed office? What will be the new norm? People will be still preferring to go for open offices?
Well, for what I do, we continue to, I guess, receive assignments to help people to remove offices and go into open plan environments. And that is something that, we feel that is still the predominant appetite in the market. There are a lot of organizations who like to take that step forward, however, are being held back by, I guess, a lot of hierarchical concerns and also cultural confinements, perhaps, that, sometimes we tie space entitlements to our title. And we are, I guess, restricted to take ourselves out of a private office because we feel like we've earned it after 20, 30 years serving, in a company. And that sense of entitlement, I wanted to maybe bring back my previous point, is that sense of entitlement and the sense of belonging is going to be redefined after COVID.
Yeah. Great perspective. Today, one more question to you before we jump to audience questions. Colliers has been involved in research, development. You are thought leader. The company is like setting the benchmark and thought leadership. Just wanted to check that how Colliers is helping occupiers and occupier, advisory and advising occupiers in this time, and how they are advising on workplace strategy, and how the short-term, mid-term, and long-term measures being proposed by Colliers. Because you are already a strategist, so you can advise us. What is the Colliers plan of action for the situation?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Well, maybe I'll tap into the short term first. So, as right now, different countries are facing different, I guess, pace in terms of returning to the office. For the short term measure, we are helping our occupiers to do a readiness checklist for their space. So this is very much just space focused in terms of sanitization, in terms of the different social distancing measures that have to take place. Do we remove some chairs, or do we have multiple communication signboards? Do we make sure that internal communication, external communication, rotation systems are being communicated properly? So we are doing a really fast-paced readiness checklist to allow our occupiers to have a very comprehensive checklist, so therefore they can take every action items up and say, right, we're ready to allow our employees back to work, feeling safe and feeling, I guess, the health and safety measures are all being met. And some of the mid-term and long-term measures that we're doing with our occupiers is that we are also tapping into a calculator, how do we measure space in the future with social distancing, which is really here to stay as well. So in the future, how do we look at density? The density, typically we look at Asia, or I'm in Hong Kong, so the density for Hong Kong is typically around 90 to 100 per square feet per person. Contrary to perhaps the countries like Australia or America, we're looking at maybe 150 to 200. However, in the future, I would say that there's a definite shift to looking at the density per workstation or per work point, because if you take work from home as part of the real estate strategy, and if one day a week everybody will choose to work from home, that's 20% of your real estate spend, right? So we need to factor that in. So therefore, in the future, maybe workstations might be bigger. However, maybe we have to allow the occupancy of the space to be, at any point in time, only 80% maximized, because we cannot really, look at the 100% occupancy in the future, right? So there's a shift in terms of how do we, manage occupancy in the long run. So that would be a long-term conversation that we need to have with our occupiers. And typically when, I guess, pre-COVID, when we looked at density, we always trying to optimize, maximize, densify. But densification will probably be out of the conversation in the future. And in the future, it will be a case of, how do we effectively use the space we have? And responding to one of the questions previously, I don't see a dip in the sense of the leased space. But what I see very important in the future is that if you have 100 people, do you continue to provide 100 desks? And do you continue to, lease 10,000 square feet per se, with the same mindset in terms of density? That will be a very different conversation post-COVID.
Yep. Thank you, Rudy. One thing which, Sankey, I'm coming back to you, that as Rudy has said, that people will be working from home, but at the same time, in office, the desk size will increase. The density which we are using working right now, it will definitely be, we have to redense our offices. Many questions I can see in Q&A that people are asking you, that the redensification versus the work from home, will it be countered together?
I think like Trudy said, on the short term, that's going to be there, where and I think that a lot of the points which have been conveyed by some of the leaders of large companies which you mentioned, I think that it's been misunderstood a lot in the what we read, and by the time it comes out into the press and the reading media. The key point which has been highlighted is how they can maintain the safety of the employees, maintain social distancing, and at the same time ensure that the people work from office as well as from home. To balance it, it would be difficult. Like, let's say an office is working at a a density of 80, 90, 100 square feet a person suddenly finds that you've got to maintain that social distancing, you may find that there is going to be every one person out of three, or every one out of two, depending upon the density in which it is designed, may have to work from home, remote working. So in the short term, when everything gets back to normal, you are going to find this happening. At the same time, there's going to be a huge amount of redesign to existing spaces. There's going to be a lot of for the future spaces, there's going to be a redesign. And I think that to maintain the social distancing, to involve the best efficiencies from the design perspective, is something that, let's say Colliers, we have a research wing which is sitting constantly and putting together a great proposition from an architectural point of view. Our architectural team is putting together various options to see how you can make it more efficient. Now, if you do by the thumb rule, you may be 30%, but can you make it 60%? What is the minimum changes you need to do so that we can give a client an option that in his present layout, he'll be able to accommodate 70%, maybe 80%, maybe 90%, maybe 60%. So these are the services that I think that like the Colliers, which has an architectural division and has a research wing, is able to do at this moment, where we are trying to bring about this huge change and even present it to, whether it is to developers, whether it is to the end users. We feel that this is going to help in a long way in the way they will perceive going forward in the business. So in the short term, you're absolutely right. There is going to be a lot of constraint with the number of people that can be accommodated within an office to maintain all the social hygiene and what we require from the perspective of a COVID-19.
Yeah. One thing, Sanky would like to ask, like before, pre-COVID, there was a situation where we were only discussing about the wellness and luxury, offices, like where the large multinational, those who are managing their large offices in India, they were like, you can say the very small segment of the occupiers were thinking about the, wellness at the work. Today, everybody and every occupier is talking about the wellness of employees. What kind of shift you are seeing in the approach and the occupiers?
Yeah, I would say that the employee wellness plans it improves productivity, number one. So it is something, and improves job satisfaction. Occupiers have been focusing on these initiatives, to be honest, to boost employee productivity. In fact, to maximize the impact of the wellness initiatives, we believe that developers and occupiers need to align employee with the business priorities. This is going to get entwined together as one point. That is, for example, for developers, well-being ought to be a critical factor to attract and retain high-quality tenants. Developers, in fact, can utilize features in the design of future high-performance buildings. We call them, previously we used to say LEED certified and all those things, but today I think the prominence of high-performance buildings are nothing but getting the efficiencies of all the high-performance parameters of a building to work together and to produce, whether it's not just about the energy, it's about the security, it's about the safety, it's about the productivity, it's about the wellness of the employees, it's about everything that a building can produce. We call them as HPBs, which is the high performance building. The investments for high performance building could be a little higher, but I think that yields a much bigger result for occupiers, and I believe that the future will be for the high performance buildings. And the incremental cost that may occur may not be very prominent for the quality and wellness and the results that would produce, and which is going to become a necessity from large occupiers. Workforce is a second. It's you get 3% higher productivity, you have 30% lower sick leave, you have a 5% lower attrition rate, and you have which leads to an enhanced workforce productivity. So if you look at it, that investment leads to a great workforce and a retention of employees for organizations. And I think an occupier financial gains at the end of the day anywhere. I mean, this could be a very broad number depending upon various businesses, it could change. But as a thumb rule, you can say anywhere 6 to 7% higher long-term profits on the bottom line by having buildings which are more towards the high performance buildings that I would suggest as one of the important factors that developers and occupiers should be focusing going forward.
I think great perspective, Sanket. Before we jump to audience question, I am inviting few of the audience in the panel box, Sanket, so they can come and ask the question. So Meera Reddy has asked a very interesting question. Meera, I am inviting you in the panel and you can ask your question. Meera, you are in panelist box now. Meera, you can just unmute yourself and ask the question. Meera, can you please unmute yourself? Meera Reddy. So Meera is asking, what is the one thing that tenant will look from the developers when they start their operations day one? Sanket, this question is for you.
Sure. So, hi Meera. I think you're unmuted now. This is Sanket here. So I can say that I think occupiers would definitely be looking at, firstly, the safety of the employees is a first factor. Whereas, like say you have a multi-tenanted building, you have multi-tenanted campuses, there are multiple points where people will meet and people will greet. So I think that from an occupier's perspective, right from when an employee enters into a campus or into the building to the time they work and they leave the campus, I think they would look at a much higher safety standards, security, and in case of an emergency, how equipped will a developer be to face the emergency that could happen as an emergency. Now the government has given guidelines that what if an employee has been found with a particular, let's say Covid19, what are going to be the measures that are being taken? So as a developer, let's say we are in a campus of 40,000 people and tomorrow we have a good number of them, even if it is 30% working, 40% working. In case of an eventuality, I think the comfort that developers need to give occupiers is how safe the environment, to how safe is my employee who comes to work and goes back, and how prepared is a developer community in case of an eventuality and consequence, which will definitely give the comfort for occupiers, and then it translates to his employees to give the comfort on going forward in coming freely to work and to go back.
Thank you. So we have another, Phyllis Chong. Phyllis Chong, can you just please unmute yourself and switch on your camera and ask your question, please? You have a question. You have posted a question in question and answer box. Phyllis, are you there? Yeah. So we have Pooja J. Pooja, can you just unmute yourself? Pooja J, you have posted a question, Pooja.
Hi, sorry, this is Felice. Something was wrong with my mute button. So my question is really for Trudy and the Hong Kong market, and I just wanted to understand whether she would be seeing a lot of clients and prospective corporates that would be changing their floor plates post-COVID.
So for Hong Kong right now, my answer will be no. There will be no immediate drastic changes. And well, as far as my conversation with my clients are concerned, I don't really foresee Hong Kong occupiers will invest in very short-term, massive changes to the space. What I see is they will look to the future to see how to actually, create a flexible environment, and that will be, prepared for any surprise, pandemic that needs to happen. I think flexibility is the key word for me here. However, I do see some short-term, quick I guess, temporary measures in terms of removing furniture or adding in partitions, adding in temporary separations, reducing occupancy in meeting rooms, and that's what I'm seeing. But no immediate major investments to change the space yet.
Thank you, Felice. So I will only take one last question, which is I'm taking from Pooja. Pooja, are you ready? Can you just unmute yourself?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me? This is Pooja.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yes, please. So my question was, what I feel is the real estate industry, as what we've been talking about until now, if that is impacted and people are going to work from home, there are a lot of other businesses which would really get affected, like, a lot of service providers, like specifically how the talent acquisition industry would be affected, because if people are already working from home and there is no space, employers are not taking offices to work, then will companies really hire more talent? Or is it going to, because it will create a ripple effect. So what do you think? How does the real estate thing really affect a lot of other things? We want companies to take offices and work from there. Plus, growth of individuals working from home is a big question, because individually, if I'm isolated and sitting with myself and communicating with you online, whatever I am, but my individual growth and exposure is challenged here. I mean, how long can I do that?
Yeah, Sanki, over to you.
Yeah, hi Pooja. Good question. I can say that if you even in the previous questions when I had mentioned that it's not all businesses that can definitely work from home. There are some businesses which can work from home, and I said that there is a contingency that's available in case of an emergency. And yes, we have been reading and finding a lot of articles regarding the certain amount of trauma for some people who work from home. For some people, it has been beneficial where they have been able to help in the family matters. But as a permanent solution, as I said, this is something which was unprecedented, which has come up now. And I think going forward, a lot of the your points will be answered automatically when we see that it's going to be a combination, as I said. So there will be always a mix of things that are happening, and there will be a stress on certain business elements and certain parts of the businesses which we look at. But I still feel I'm a strong a believer that you are going to see that the work from offices would have its benefits, advantages, but the present scenario becomes a necessity from a point of view of maintaining the social distancing and things like that. But going forward with more efficient buildings, more planning in spaces, as Trudy made those presentations, we are going to see that there's going to be a certain element of a combination is going to happen. But overall, I think your point is valid, but there are different people with different views. To respect all the views, I can only say one thing, that there's going to be a combination. There are businesses that can work from home, there are businesses that cannot work from home, and both will survive. And I think at the end of the day, there will be more absorption. People, talent, all this would find its place, and this will also pass. And we will all be back singing the same old song, and we should be happy.
Yeah, Sandeep, can you just show the poll results? Trudy, can you just describe the poll results? I think results are in front of us, so we can form an opinion out of it.
Sure, happy to do so. So there's, I can see the poll, the number one question: how ready is your organization for employees to return to the office? And we're seeing a very, very positive result. 55% of you said that your organization is very prepared for employees to return to work. And we're seeing maybe a short number, less than around 15% of you saying that you are not sure and you're in the middle of gathering information. So the second poll question: as you prepare for the return to the office, what are your most significant challenges? And this one is quite interesting. We're seeing a very dispersed way of people responding. So there are some 18% saying that you're in the middle of determining who will need to return first and getting the schedule, and some are 20% responding that communicating and preparing employees. And 13, creating a space that provides this 6 feet accommodation throughout. And there's a 10% of you saying that you're right now cleaning and helping people to feel safe. And 10% are saying that you're managing the density, perhaps that is referring to the rotation. And I'm really happy to see this result. 29%, almost 30% of you are saying that your organization are establishing new behaviors and perhaps new protocols. So yeah, this is absolutely essential during this pandemic. How do you feel resuming work at office? We're seeing a mixed bag here again. 26 feel very confident. A lot of you feel comfortable, and a lot of you feel this is going to be business as usual when you resume back to the office. 30 to 40% of you feeling unsure, uncertain, and skeptical, and feeling a bit vulnerable. And this is also very pleasant to see that only 1% of you feeling insecure. And I hope that those little amount of you feeling insecure are going to take some advice from the call we just had today.
One more survey is also there today.
Okay, excellent. So this one we're the second poll. The first question says, now we have all experience working from home. How do you think it will change your workplace? Wow, we are seeing a very high percentage. Half of you telling us that my workplace will be primarily a place to collaborate and connect, which is really true. So in our global survey, we are seeing that people who will make the decision to return to the office essentially is to meet people, and it's not really to do focus work. And the second, response is my workplace will have fewer assigned desks and more drop-in or hoteling spaces, which is, this is echoing to my previous, comments. My workplace will remain the same. 33% of you are saying that maybe your organization is not making changes to your workplace. Which is perhaps the case, but maybe, take into account the social distancing and the separation. The last one, there's 3% of you say what workplace. So maybe a lot of you are working from home and maybe from a remote location, cafe, or different places apart from the office. The second question, do you foresee your organization accommodating more days to work from home? And if so, how many? Wow, so some of you, 23% are saying you don't really foresee working from home being part of the, options for you. So this is something that hopefully after this webinar, you're able to bring back some data to your organization and rethink how to introduce some flexibilities in terms of work for your employees. 1 to 2 days, majority of you are responding that 1 to 2 days, which is exactly what the data is telling us. Some of you, 18% of you telling us that 2 to 3 days, with a very small proportion of you saying 3 to 4 days and 4 to 5 days. And some of you are saying it's very much based on employee choice, a small percentage. So this is, I think this is reflecting the previous sentiment around, we are all different and we are all individuals and we all have our own individual preferred way to work. And how will organizations create options and allow people to, make that choice is definitely a very executive conversation post-COVID.
Yeah, thank you, Rudy. We are concluding our webinar with this last question to Senki. Senki, you are an entrepreneur, and the real estate, construction, architecture, brokers, like very less barriers. There are thousands and lakhs of entrepreneurs in the ecosystem. I would like to just get one message from an entrepreneur desk to entrepreneurs. What do you think? What kind of, how they should create resilience in this current pandemic time?
Yeah, so I would think that first I would say to be strong, to be confident. I think a fear is worse than the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
Remove that for fear. Be confident, be strong. This will also pass. We will come out stronger. Have a lot of interactions with the teams. Be honest with your people. Give them the true figure. What is the status? What is happening? And when you come out of it, you're going to have a great team that's going to work together to bring back everything in a much faster pace. I would just like to give a small quote from, an old quote from Mark Twain. 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things that you didn't do than by the ones you did do. So throw off the bowlines, sail away from safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, discover.
Thank you. And it's a great perspective.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone joining this webinar today and coming with Workplace Trends India. And it's a very, and again, I thank you, Sankey and Trudy, for coming and making this time to, enlighten us with your knowledge. And thank you, everyone. Please follow us on LinkedIn. We are, our page is on LinkedIn, and we are updating all information, all insights, videos, and reports on LinkedIn page. Look forward to again meet you tomorrow. There is another webinar. There is like Kay Sargent from UK. She will be joining us. And there are 4 eminent panelists, Mr. Amit Grover, Mr. Bimal Desai, Sachin Boradia will be joining us tomorrow, and Mr. Krishna Murthy from IBM will be joining tomorrow. So looking forward to connecting you again tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.